Today's episode brought to you by Goats, and more goats.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, The Blevins, and with me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. How are you?
I am doing well, doing great, super happy and excited that nothing changed from Stage 2 to Stage 3, except for the addition of one map. Really, really great considering technically last stage was the worst stage for both of my two favorite teams in franchise history.
I thought you were going to say you were really, really happy that New York escaped Houston by the skin of their teeth, but
easiest matchup they've ever played.
Okay.
Could not have been an easier win. Could not have been an easier win. I wasn't even scared for even a second.
You wouldn't even talk to me while that game was going.
I wasn't even scared for 1 second. Although I did have all of my NYXL merch in a pile, lightly doused in gasoline. But that was for something else completely, not a fire.
Charcoal starter fluid, not
Yeah.
gasoline, so that way it could be washed out.
Right.
Which thankfully it was. You were all set.
Yes. But we will definitely be talking about that after we get through some housekeeping. Let's start there. First and foremost, by popular request, I can say I finally come through with one thing that people have requested, and that is Spotify. Every single High Noon production show, yes, all of them are on Spotify now. Flagship, Foul Play, Around the Payload, and Blackwatch Report are all on Spotify. If you search High Noon Productions, all of them will pop up. And then you can search for the individual shows as you like. But make sure...
Don't search for one of them. Search for all of them.
Search for all of them.
Subscribe leave ratings,
to
everything.
all of them. Search High Noon Productions on Spotify. Hit that subscribe button. Throw some love over to all the shows. And now you don't need to use your other platform, Spotify. It's universally used and loved, and I'm pretty sure you don't need to have Spotify Premium to use it. If you do, let me know, because shame on them. If I can take that off, I will, but I don't think you do. I don't think you need to. But yeah, so all the shows are on Spotify. So thank you, everyone, for letting me know that we should put them on there. I've wanted to do it for a while, and I just forget. So I'm glad.
Well, you weren't forgetting Spotify so much as they didn't believe we owned all of the RSS feeds.
No, that's Google that did that.
Oh, that's Google.
The reason that Spotify didn't work initially is because there's some weird back end thing that's not interesting enough to talk about. But I fixed it, so that's all that matters, is that it is fixed. Yeah, not interesting or exciting. So we'll move on from that. But they are all on Spotify. Make sure, even if you don't listen to them on Spotify, just start using Spotify, because Spotify is great. We're not sponsored, but we are on there. So that's
Hashtag not a sponsor.
hashtag not an ad.
But they could be.
Yeah, Spotify, reach out.
Spotify.
Yeah. Hit us up, highnoonpodcast@gmail.com. But let's talk about what the High Noon Productions, what you are going to be listening to on your brand new, fresh, crispy Spotify feeds. Around the Payload returned back, and I know I say this almost every time. I don't say this almost every time. Usually we have spicy episodes just because the guests are so good. But this one was a whole nother level of spice, crunchy. It went off the rails more than I think any other episode that I've ever done has. It was crazy.
I can test everything about the episode, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that is a perfectly reasonable response to what happened in that episode. But we had Save Reality, Hexagrams, Ham Tornado, and Ednar on there, so definitely make sure you check that out. Man, we talked about everything from what were we? Oh, we were talking about the stock investments to Fortnite esports. Like, yeah, it went the full spectrum of things that 13-year-olds do and things that boomers do. Yeah, we went the full gambit there. We also had the return of the High Noon Hot Seat with the Great Root Bear, who was running for the Overwatch World Cup Team Canada community lead. Man, I could not remember the title while I was recording the show, and I just rattled it off like nothing. I don't even have it written down now. I think the voting is closed, so hopefully we'll be hearing some good news relatively soon. So keep an eye out there. Make sure to check out that episode. That was another one. I mean, if you know anything about the Great Root Bear, you know that we went off and talked about all sorts of stuff. We went way beyond the Overwatch World Cup fund about Five Deadly Venoms and how that started, and really all about him and what he's doing with what his plans are for the Overwatch World Cup. So definitely make sure you check that one out. And of course, the Blackwatch Report, as always, cruising along. Volumel and Boopasaurus are going to be on the on Blackwatch Report tomorrow for the Contenders Roundtable. So make sure to check that one out over at Blackwatch Report.
Tomorrow, that's June 11th. So
yes,
even if you're in past, future, present podcast land, June 11th. If you're listening to it on the podcast feed, it's either today or already out. So we won't have to wait.
Yes. So make sure you check that out. For sure. And remember, you can get it on Spotify as well. And Foul Play, new episodes coming out tomorrow. We're going to be doing some changes. We might move some stuff around a bit. Foul Play is a little bit in flux right now, but we will make sure to get everything sorted out in the coming weeks. And we are planning on doing an episode tomorrow. So let's move on and talk a little bit about what we did last week. Deathblow, anything fun and exciting for you?
No, nothing in particular. I've just been grinding Dauntless a little bit and got some Overwatch in this weekend. Had a really fun play session. Got some people together I haven't played with in a while. I think we played for like 2.5 hours and didn't lose once.
Nice.
So it's really easy to have a really good time when you're just winning the whole time.
Who were you? My opponents?
No. Better than that. Much higher as
no. I'm just saying, because my opponents generally go 2.5 hours of me playing and they don't lose. So
could have been. I don't know. I can't keep track of all your accounts.
No, I only have one account.
All your one accounts.
I have one account. I am well. Okay. I don't technically only have one Blizzard account. I only own one copy of Overwatch that I play. I've made hundreds of Blizzard accounts to cheat the Heroes of the Storm thing. But yeah, so I actually did jump into Overwatch a little bit, and I played exclusively gun game because that's the only thing that I want to play right now. It's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
It is.
It's too fun for an arcade mode. I don't want to enjoy arcade modes. I want them to be unfun, so I have no desire to play them.
Give me ranked gun game, and I will be all about that. But yeah, I'm still like there's probably like 3 or 4 workshop games that have caught my eye. But every time I see them, they're like, new update for the workshop game. And it's even more crazy than you would have thought. It's so much better than it was last week. You were an idiot if you downloaded it last week. Download it now. I'm like, maybe I'll just wait till next week when they do another update. So I'm going to give the workshop games a solid like 2-3 months. See which ones simmer up to the top. Because the thing about these workshop games for Dota or Warcraft 3 is like the good ones. The good and the polished ones are the ones that end up rising to the top, and they're the ones that people end up playing. You can find a really maybe fun one that you personally like, but if no one plays, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to wait on that and maybe get some, bring in some workshop games or talk about them at some point. But not quite yet. But let us move on and talk about... Come on, I pressed the button. I had these ready.
It's news.
I still don't know how these sound buttons work. We got a little bit of news here. We'll start with the actual Overwatch League related news. Bunny has left the LA Valiant, formerly of the Seoul Dynasty, if I recall correctly. Yes. Now has left the LA Valiant. Death, any Is this relevant? Are we seeing any? Is this a sign of anything? What do you think about Bunny leaving LA?
Just further confirmation that the Valiant are going to a fully Western roster, or at least a fully English-speaking roster. They're even playing Kariv over Izayaki, and they're both Korean players, but Kariv has just scads of experience in English-speaking rosters and with this organization and things like that. So his English is quite good. He's on their YouTube channel cooking things with agilities and silly stuff like that. So they're just decisively moving away from kind of that mixed half Korean feel and going into full Western, or at least English speaking. And this is just another sign of that to me. This wasn't a player that should have really been playing for them. Right. He's got a very narrow hero pool, at least from what I've seen of him, and his time in Overwatch League has certainly kind of supported that as well. And they weren't using him. And when you're bottom of the league and you're not using a player, it's kind of like no news to let him go. Right. Hopefully he can get some time in tier 2 this season coming up, or very soon, and try to make another bid to get back into the league on maybe a team that has a need for him. But I don't think the Valiant did. They want to look towards some of their more developmental options with the state of the team and their spot in the standings right now, and it's hard to blame them.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point. So we talked about last week about how it makes sense for teams, at least the Western teams, to, as an organization, have a language that the team speaks or communicates in, i.e. English for most of these teams, obviously, in the Western teams. So it on Around the Payload, actually, Hexagrams kind of alluded that might be the case for some of these teams. Even the teams that are all Korean, some of the teams that are all Korean may be communicating in English for that very same reason of, hey, we've got an all Korean roster right now, but we're going to be based in, this state in the United States. So we might be bringing in Western players. And if the whole team is speaking Korean, and I'm a top Western prospect or a top English only speaking prospect, maybe I don't want to go to this team. The inverse it can be true as well, but I think you default to the language that your team is from and that your fans are going to be speaking at the end of the day. It would be interesting. It almost brings, I didn't even think about this, but it brings up an interesting thought experiment of, like, if that's the case. So Kariv playing over Izayaki, like you said, really kind of signals that. So maybe LA looking to ship Izayaki. I mean, where does Izayaki go, right? Like, who could use Izayaki? That he would be an interesting prospect to, if he left as a free agent. I mean, I think there'd be a lot of bids there.
Yeah, it's really tough to say, right? Because especially at this point in the season, you have to think a team that's in a decent spot in the standings is probably going to want to hold pat with their position. And listen, Izayaki's looked very good in his time in Overwatch League. He's a bit of a fragger on Zen, but that said, there's a lot of Zenyatta players that work with the team a little better. They get more value out of their transcendences, things like that. But I think you basically just can kind of start at the bottom of the standings and say the Florida Mayhem would probably welcome the opportunity to bring in a player like that. Now the Washington Justice just traded for Sleepy, so I think we can kind of rule them out. There was talk that Crimzo basically put out like a cryptic tweet that said, I just made the best decision of my life, or something like that. And of course, trolls on Twitter and Reddit connected the dots to say he rejected a contract from the Houston Outlaws. I don't tend to think there was one forthcoming because of their sales situation that's going on with them. Given the struggles they had last stage to do absolutely nothing, tells me that Flame's hands are probably pretty well tied behind his back at the moment, and he probably can't do much. But I think Houston could potentially make a bid there. We see the Guangzhou Charge. They're probably set with Shu. He's been ridiculous. Chengdu, I think, could stand to have an upgrade at the off-tank or the flex support position. But after that, these teams are probably pretty happy with what they have, and going forward, probably going to stick with them. So, there's a handful, 3 or 4 teams. You might see somebody believe in him, want to develop him, sign him to not necessarily play right away, but now they control him. They can re-sign him for next year, do whatever they want to do. And if you count those teams, there's about 20 of them that would consider a player with what I think his skill ceiling is. Not that he's there now, but I think when you have that kind of raw fragging potential that he has, it's just a matter of getting some good coaching, some good team communication to kind of get that ultimate problem or the alt usage problem of his fixed. And I think a lot of teams would kind of want to bring that in and maybe coach it up. And it's tough to say because, you want to try to include teams. Like, honestly, I think, listen, Unko's been very good for Dallas, but I think there's room for improvement there. There's a lot of these teams that are doing well right now where there's room to upgrade at that position. Hangzhou, there's looking down the list. I don't think Shanghai is necessarily at their cap as far as that position goes. There's a few. So there's a lot of places he might end up, but for now, I think if they were going to move him or if teams were really knocking down their door to try to get him, he'd probably be gone. So I expect him to kind of hang tight.
I mean, he could be one of the irons in the fire. Who knows?
He could be. He could certainly be. And there's also a decent chance that we see the Valiant just do a lot of switching around over the next two stages and really bring Izayaki back in. Yeah, pull a soul, but have it not be a terrible idea because they don't need to train up for later in the season or anything like that.
Or maybe we should start calling it the NYXL because they're moving things around as well. But we'll talk about that in a bit. First, we got to talk about the most important piece of news here, and that is the fact that we got some new jerseys. We got some brand spanking new jerseys from all but 5 of the teams. I have no idea why 5 of the teams did not participate in this, but we have brand new
4 ones we did get that I don't know why they did participate. So I guess
we have Fuel, Gladiators, Houston, London, Mayhem, NYXL, Paris, Philly, Atlanta, San Francisco, Hangzhou Spark, Toronto, Boston, LA Valiant, and Washington as the teams who did get brand new jerseys here. And what I like about the collection as a whole, we'll talk about individual jerseys in a second, but what I like about the jerseys as a whole is it's not just, this is just a slight redesign of what the jerseys normally look like, which we see a lot of times. Teams, I mean, in professional traditional sports, I mean, we see a whole swath of different jerseys, and they do specific days where they'll have Military Day, or they'll have Breast Cancer Awareness Day, or they'll have a special event. That's another marketing thing that the teams can do to drive people into the stadiums. But for the most part, if a team changes their jersey from year to year, sometimes they'll just have a complete brand redesign, or not redesign, but recolor or reskinning, I guess, if you could call it, if you're going to mix video game terms here. But a lot of times it's like they just take the color scheme and the logo and they just kind of jazz it up a little bit every few years. These are in most of them, the collection, I'll say, is inspired by things from the actual areas that they're from. A lot of them did specific homages to actual other professional sports. The Houston Outlaws comes to mind. They're basically a copy or a reimagining of a retro Houston Astros jersey, which is really cool. The Philadelphia Fusion one is like a referee jersey for some reason. The Atlanta Reign one is like kind of peach colored, like the Georgia peach. And then, I mean, Florida Mayhem, they finally did the Mayhem Vice colors, which we've been wanting for so long.
The hottest of irons officially dropped.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about them specifically, or
why don't you give me your top 2, and then we'll do our bottom 2.
So it's a little tough to say top 2, but I'm going to give the number 1 to the Florida Mayhem for my number 1 alternate jersey. Honestly, and I've been adamant that I hate the idea of the color scheme that this jersey goes with, and I just never envisioned it looking this way and this good, to be perfectly honest with you. They absolutely killed it with this jersey. Anytime they talked about the colors, they would just put like a wall of pink next to the wall of green or whatever, and it was just like, it looks so bad, but the way they did it was incredible. The way it's mostly black, but you know, you have the outline of the symbol in those colors, and it just really makes it pop, and it just looks really, really great. So props to them for that. Number 2, I'm going to give you more than you told me to give.
Sure.
I'm going to give you a tie here, I think, between Houston and the Gladiators. There's things I would do different for the Houston one, me personally, if I was going to get it. I would have started with the light colors at the bottom and then faded up into black instead of darker green and then fading up into the white. But it is a clear homage to the Astros jersey. The Lone Star is in the same spot on the jersey. You just also have the rest of the logo underneath it. It looks really, really sharp. It's just great to see an injection of personality in a couple of these teams. And then the Gladiators is honestly just a really strong jersey. It's a kind of a profile of the lion. And there's some patterns with a skull pattern in the background of it. It's got their name on the kind of the side of it. And it's just a really sharp looking jersey. I like it quite a bit. I just think they did a great job to just listen. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They didn't go. Neither of these two teams in particular changed their identity or made it so you're wondering what team it is when you look at it, some of them. But they just put a little more into it, just a little spice, a little something different, and I think it makes them stand out. It makes them look that much better when they do wear them. So it's pretty great. I'm a pretty big fan of all 3 of those jerseys. What about you?
Yeah, so I agree with the Mayhem and Gladiators for sure. For all the reasons you just described. I think at first, the Gladiators one, I think the imprint design on it is the coolest to me. I've always liked the big lion head as the Gladiators mascot. That's just always been cool to me. So really like that one. I didn't like the Outlaws one at first when I saw it. I thought it just kind of looked stupid. But when I saw that it's an homage to the old Astros jersey, it actually got a lot cooler to me. I still wouldn't, from looks alone, I don't like it, just like I don't like that old Astros jersey. But it is a really cool homage, and I think that they went with the concept and really executed it well. The other one I would add up here that I really liked was actually the Shock one. When they kind of alluded that it was going to be camouflage, I'm like, oh, they're just going to do normal green, regular camouflage. I'm like, oh, that's all right. I like alternate jerseys that are that, but it's not unique. But then they did kind of the gray. They did the shot color camouflage, which I thought was kind of cool. I don't know.
It looks solid, but you kind of lose points on originality when you're using such a well-known pattern and things like that. It looks good. It's a great change of pace. It's kind of what you want from a third jersey. It's a drastically different look, but it's maybe one I would tire of if they used very often. So once a stage, if they came out with it, I'd be like, oh cool, it's camo day or something like that, I'd like it. But I do think it would get old soon. That's why it wasn't kind of the top of my list.
I do actually, now that you say it, I think that what they should have done is, instead of having this be this series jersey for the Shock, this should just be the default camo jersey for every team, and it should just be the color scheme for the teams and just use that exact print. But in and of itself, it does look. I do like it.
It's miles ahead of some of these other ones that we're about to make.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the worst ones.
Sure, and shout outs to New York. Theirs looks really cool. I like the cityscape. It's not drastically different. That's kind of where it loses points, but I love the cityscape.
They could have done so much more. What I really like about NYXL jerseys is the actual the numbering is the NYXL numbers. I really liked that.
This is what I'd really like to see replace their primaries for New York, and then get something cooler and more unique for the third, but this should be primaries. And also shout outs to Jonak for wearing pajama pants to a professional photo shoot to model them. So let's start with not the worst, because the worst for me is a standalone, horrific to look at, breaks my heart to even say it. But I want to get the shame bell ready, by the way. We're going to talk about the Washington Justice, the Paris Eternal, and the Dallas Fuel, because all three of them have the exact same jersey. It is black on black. What the pattern is doesn't matter because you can't see it because it's black on black, which is stupid. You had people literally returning jerseys for the Atlanta Reign because they came black on black and they weren't supposed to come black on black, and they're like, this is ridiculous. I can't see the name on the back of the jersey. All this stuff. You can't see anything. It just, you look like you're in a black t-shirt. You look ridiculous to me. You need light to hit it in a specific way for it to even look right. That's just, it's gross. And worse, three of them did it at the exact same time. Gross. So hit them with a shame bell. It's fitting.
Oh, they got plenty of shame bells.
Okay. Now, my absolute, bar none, worst jersey, and Blevins knows exactly where I'm going.
I know where you're going with it.
It's disgusting, and it breaks my heart a little bit. And when I thought these were like replacement primary jerseys, I was mortified because it is the Toronto Defiant. And I've got to say, if they paid anybody to design this thing, they should sue them. Now, don't even get your money back. Like, you're owed. Because this is, it is brutal. The top is fine. You've got the logo, you've got the nameplate or whatever. I kind of wish more teams got completely away from the shoulder nameplate. But I don't know that really any of them did. Some of them changed the style, but kept the names there, whatever. But that's fine if that's where the names are going to be on these jerseys. It does make a little bit of sense. But everything below the torso is just an absolute nightmare on the Toronto jersey. It's just alternating black and white horizontal stripes like they're prison inmates. And then in the stripes, the alternate color, in the black stripe, there's white text, and in the white, there's black text. And it just says, I'm going to read it for you, 666, 666, 666, 66. Why are we worshiping the devil so much? I don't understand, first of all.
It's the Judas Priest song.
Now, I translated from all the different languages that it's in, and I like that aspect of it. Listen, they're a mixed roster team, so I get that. Anybody that's wondering, they're not actually worshiping the devil. 6 is in some way tied to Toronto. I don't know. I'm an hour up the road. I don't know how or why, and I don't care how or why the number 6 is tied to Toronto. It really doesn't matter to me. I think there's
something to do with Drake, I think. Or at least was popularized by
him. You're making it worse. But the only thing worse than this is his music. But so it's really tough for me. There's a reason you don't see sports teams like Buffalo really identifies with their area code. It's been the city's been branded with it, right? The 716. We're all about it, and we have bars named the 716. True. All these things. But you know what we didn't do for any of our sports teams? Plaster the area code on the jerseys, okay? And then, kind of bring that, because we want to be able to sell the jerseys outside of the area code or outside of the city. And as somebody that's outside of Toronto, boy, do I not care about the number 6 even a little bit. So I have no desire to buy this jersey, even if it wouldn't make me look like I was wearing a prison uniform. And then to top it all off, if this is coming from Twitter or Reddit, I don't remember exactly where I saw it, they mistranslated the number 6 in multiple languages. And some of them mean 6, but they're just in a context. Different languages have different, there's the masculine version, there's the feminine version, there's the one you'd use in a vacuum, there's all these different ways to conjugate verbs, and I don't fully understand it all, but they used Google Translate to get, from English, SIX, to whatever the other languages, and Google Translate got it wrong because Google Translate's not perfect. It's just meant to kind of give you some idea or say something that somebody might understand, even if you kind of sound ridiculous. And that's what's plastered on these jerseys, and it's just crazy to me that they wouldn't spend the money to get the right translation. And on top of it all, it's just it's a literal eyesore. I honestly, for me, in contention for the ugliest sports uniforms from any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And this includes going way back to like the black and yellow striped prison guard uniforms of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and like going way, way back into like, it is just horrific to look at. And I blame the outcome of the match this week on the jersey. I don't have any alternative solution for why they lost this week. So that's it. I mean, I'm still a Toronto fan. I'm not going to change my mind because I don't like an alternate jersey or anything like that. But just horrifying to look at.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Toronto one. I don't feel as strongly as you do about this. Yeah, so I do agree, however, that the Washington, Dallas, and Paris ones just what I'll say is that all three of those are worse than Vancouver's, and Vancouver didn't make one. Like, just get a regular Vancouver jersey. It is better than all of these jerseys, even if you're supporting the team. I think my number one worst here, outside of those three completely awful ones, man, I think it's got to be the London Spitfire one. Not because it's a completely different color than the London Spitfire's main colors. Not because it's pink, but because like it's literally just a Hangzhou Spark jersey. London just gave us a Hangzhou Spark jersey that says London Spitfire on it. Why do I want this? I would rather be a Foot Locker employee with a Philadelphia Fusion jersey by a country mile.
I didn't love it and still don't, even now knowing kind of the meaning and the story behind it. But I will say there was a pink Spitfire plane flown in World War II that this is a specific homage to, and the pattern is like a sunrise kind of a thing. So listen,
it gets mild.
All the homages in the world don't make up for it if it just looks ugly and like an eyesore to you. So
it's not even an eyesore. It's just the fact that it's literally just a Hangzhou Spark jersey. Like, okay, that's fine. Like it's an homage to something, but like, is there nothing else that London can reference in their jersey? Like, were there no other references they could make? Was there nothing else to draw inspiration from for their jersey than, in stage 1, London Spitfire beat the Hangzhou Spark, so we're going to make a jersey commemorating that. It's like, okay, well, couldn't you just choose something else? I don't know. I don't know. Blazing Bob brings up a really great point that can you even be in this conversation if you're colorblind?
I bashed black on black and black and white. I see those colors just fine. Also, not one of these colors confuses me. So,
yeah,
cram it. My colorblind has come up a lot recently, but it is really there. It's not a serious thing. So calm down, Bob.
I also think that the Hangzhou Spark and the LA Valiant jerseys are just lazy.
Spark looks a little uninspired. What was the other one you said?
Valiant. It looks all right. Like it looks fine.
Yeah, I like it, but it's not. There's a reason I didn't mention it in either direction, because it doesn't make me perk my ears up or anything like that. It would almost be better because at least we're talking about Toronto's, right? Right. So at least there's going to be people that
really like it.
Super off base. I don't mind it, and you're all literally blind, not colorblind, just blind. But but at least you're talking. Bad publicity is good publicity, right? No, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So.
I'm not even going to bring up who that would be in reference to, but let's move on here to our next section.
It's tournament talk.
Let us talk about the outcomes of the matches last week. We had the San Francisco Shock win 3-2 over the Atlanta Reign. The Florida Mayhem lose 4-0 against the Seoul Dynasty. The Guangzhou Charge beat the Chengdu Hunters 3-1. Shanghai Dragons beat the LA Valiant 3-1. Paris Eternal beat the Toronto Defiant 3-1 as well. London Spitfire beats Boston Uprising 4-0. NYXL with an easy easy, not even close victory, 3-2 over the Houston Outlaws. LA Gladiators 4-0 over the Dallas Fuel. Hangzhou Spark 4-0 over the Philly Fusion. Vancouver Titans 3-1 over the Atlanta Reign. Seoul Dynasty 4-0 over the Guangzhou Charge. LA Valiant 4-0 over the Chengdu Hunters, their first 4-0 of their first time getting the 4 wins in the 4-0 of this season. NYXL 4-0 is the London Spitfire. Paris Eternal 3-1 over the Boston Uprising. Dallas Fuel 3-0 over the Washington Justice, and Vancouver Titans finish off the week winning 3-1 over the Los Angeles Gladiators. Death, what were some interesting outcomes for you this week?
Well, I mean, obviously, despite the fact that you need to tell yourself what you need to tell yourself in order to sleep at night, the Houston match was like in hand for Houston. Like, honestly, even the Horizon Lunar Colony was like won by the skin of New York Steel. Like, it was super, super close in that one. It could have easily gone the opposite direction. I want to say both were like, it was like almost a second full point, but like better first point hold for Houston potentially, and then New York took it in the final push to take the map. But that one was, I mean, dangerously close to going Houston's direction, and that one was great. We saw Atlanta push San Francisco to the absolute brink in the first match. This was a really interesting week because the matchups that we thought were going to be super hotly contested and be super, super close, the Gladiators won 4-0. New York beat London 4-0.
Hangzhou won 4-0.
Right. Like, I mean, it was just like they were blowouts. And then the ones that we thought were just going to be absolute blowouts turned out to be nail biters and buzzer beaters. And like, it was a really, really interesting week. There's a couple exceptions, obviously. You know, Seoul beat Guangzhou. We did expect that, but you get my point. There was a lot more surprises than there were in both directions than we were really expecting, and I guess it's just we're getting complacent, across the board. Not us, me and you specific, but just analysts of Overwatch League are getting a little complacent and forgetting that there's been a ton of parity in the GOATS meta.
Parity puzzle.
Yeah, it's been really fun and interesting, and we need to kind of keep looking out for that as we go through the 3 more seasons of GOATS meta or whatever it's going to take before they finally fix something.
100 years of a GOATS meta.
Yeah. But so yeah, listen, there was a lot of interesting matches this week, but if you're going to watch any, I would say Houston versus New York, definitely a good one. And then what was the other
San Francisco
one?
versus
San Fran and Atlanta. Atlanta makes for a really interesting team right now because they've got 2 really strong performances. They pushed Vancouver. They tried them. I mean, they lost 3-1, but they played them really, really strong. So Atlanta looks like they might be ascending a little bit, but man, we're going to be talking about them in a little bit, and they're either ascending or joining the ranks of like legendary inconsistency like Philadelphia and just teams like that are near impossible to predict, and I more tend to lean towards the inconsistency side, but I will say this is kind of the week where they can put that to bed for me. So I'm going to be really looking at what Atlanta's able to do as their schedule lightens up and they're not playing against the teams that have been in the finals against each other for the last 2 weeks inside week 1. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see exactly what goes on there. Also, you should make a point to watch the LA Gladiators play Paris every single time they get the opportunity. They seem to understand it and play it better and more efficiently than anybody else I see. That's the map they took off Vancouver. They played a lot of DPS on that map. They have really interesting compositions, so DP's not been idle.
Paris the map. I'm like looking at it. I'm like, Gladiators didn't play against Paris.
Yeah, no, Paris the map. They've been great on that map, and they're an absolute treat to watch when they get the chance to play it. So watch that one against Vancouver. The match did get away from them, but the Paris map was super, super interesting. And Bob's in chat, so I might as well mention that the Dallas Fuel drew a map against Washington. So go watch Temple of Anubis there.
Oof, that's an oof if I have ever seen one. I mean, yeah, this was definitely an interesting week. I mean, my bold prediction of Florida did not pan out even a little bit. It just I almost wanted to pick him again. this week. But yeah, I feel like this was the first week in a while that we've seen so much for Overwatch. I mean, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches that ended in 4-0 and one in a 3-0 as well. Yeah, I mean, but like you said, like the parity's there. It's just like some of these teams are just dumpstering the other ones. I mean, New York specifically as well. I mean, they came out with SBB this week. You know, they were running Somber Goats without Sat Neko.
Mecco with an M.
Sorry, Mecco. Yeah, man, I'm confusing the.
You shuffled your
players.
2 favorite teams together, and you're just picking at random now.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, they subbed out Mecco with an M in lieu of SBB, which was interesting because against Houston did not look very good. I think the stats said he was like the second to worst Sombra of that up until that point.
Yeah. Dante out-sombred him significantly in the one map that Dante got to play. I thought looked much better. And then I don't know for sure if it was like SBB was bad. I mean, he clearly wasn't as good as he was against London. They kind of ran the table right against London, and he was a big part of it. Looked much better, but against Houston, it was like anytime he tried to EMP, Raucus was 0.2 seconds into his transcendence, and Raucus just had a beat on him, and there was no tricks, there was no misdirection to the EMPs. It was just, I'm just going to throw this translocator over the top of the fight, and everybody's going to see it coming. And Raucus was positioned really, really well. It was honestly, it was just crazy to witness. Like, you just didn't expect it. Even I picked it to be a New York 4-0 like we saw the first time around in that matchup, and it wasn't the case, and in large part it was because of how well Raucus played, how predictable SBB was, and things did seem to get a little bit back under control, obviously, for them by the end, once Houston decided to just play Goat's forehead and never switch.
We're one of the best teams in the league, and we
they never said that in their defense, but
that's true.
It's just, man, they were up. Like, on the back of DPS compositions, they were up a map, only needed to win one of the next, what was it? It was two, right? Yeah, one of the next two, and then they just went to Goats forever, refused to switch, even when it went to Oasis, which you can definitely play DPS on Oasis. We see teams do it all the time. I get, and their point is well received to me that, like, listen, it's a payload map. You kind of need the tanks. Like, yeah, I get it. And they played Gibraltar pretty well when they had Goats. They didn't pull it out, but it's New York, so what are you going to do? But then, yeah, to me, it was the map 5 just playing Goats through the Koth round. It didn't make sense. They're back, and they were back to no identity. They kind of did like a 3-map version of exactly what they did last stage against Vancouver, and from a loss that should have been encouraging to a fan base that's like looking for reasons to be encouraged. Right. They really found a way, just like they just didn't. If you just play the DPS heroes, even if it's not good, you just put Linkser on Widowmaker at some point in map 5, and people are going to be like, well, that's okay. It was New York. We're doing something now, and they just didn't do it. So it was frustrating, but I don't know. I even forget what we're talking about. It was mostly about New York and SBB playing so.
Yeah, it was just interesting that, well, the secondary point to that is that he came back against London and just absolutely just dominated him specifically and the team overall. Probably hey, let's actually look at the tape. Oh yeah, I can't do that. Let's just correct that. Oh, this is my first time playing on stage in quite some time. Let's just get that out of the way. So yeah, definitely looked good. But the one interesting thing that they brought up on the broadcast a bunch as well with this specific loadout for NYXL is like, you know what they're going to be playing. Like, they can't play a diva in this comp, so they can't flex over. So they really need to be sure that they're not going to want the diva at some point. And if teams can figure out a comp that can counter them if they don't play diva, maybe this starts to bite them in the butt a little bit. So
it could, but overall, I really like the strategy. I mean, it's easy to say that, like, oh, sure, they're not as flexible. They're going to be on the Sombra, but, like, apart from a little bit early on when they had Mecco play Sombra, they weren't changing compositions. They were just running the standard Diva Goats composition pretty much across the board, unless I'm forgetting some maps or they changed it up.
Right.
So they weren't. Listen, when you're one of the top teams, and they are a top 3 team in this league, they're still in second place. You don't need to have flexibility, right? Play your game,
Right.
make people beat you, and if you get worried about it, you can always just swap Meko in and get that flexibility back in a pinch. So that to me is kind of like a non-criticism to make about the composition and about hero switches. And Overwatch League teams aren't going for versatility and flexibility inside their rosters. That's
Right.
not something anybody's doing. That's something some teams have, and maybe in a pinch or in an emergency in the middle of a map, they might use it. But New York's very rarely in an emergency situation where they, you know what I mean? So it's completely fine. And it's more of a benefit to me to all of a sudden not have SBB be 4 stages into rust, into covered in 4 stages worth of rust come the playoffs. If the meta changes and it's not Goats suddenly, they're going to be much better off for this stage time they're getting him this stage. So I really like that they're doing this. And I think if we see it work for them and not blow up in their face, stage 4 could be Pine time. You never know.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, the one interesting thing is it seems like the comp that they brought was kind of like the Somber Goats is almost like an anti-Goats strategy. So if they're thinking, oh, well, most teams are going to be playing Goats, so we're going to be inherently advantaged against them. And if they try to counter us, they're certainly not going to be as practiced as the counter to the counter of Goats than as we are with this. So it makes sense. It's like bringing it's sort of that metagaming that we have wanted to see.
You're playing the Goats
time.
counter, and then if you all of a sudden the Goats counter isn't good and somebody's like 3 DPSing you, you're playing 3 DPS players on the field, and you can just play 3 DPS against them.
Right.
So they might not have the ability to go into your traditional Diva Goats, but they don't lack flexibility. They have probably more of it now with SBB out there. It's just they lack the ability to go to that level 1 composition maybe and play that as well as possible. But I have a feeling SBB's Diva's probably not that bad, and in a pinch could work just fine for him. So
yeah, I mean, maybe. I also think that their just contingency plan is to just not need the Diva. Like there may be as many levels in the pocket game as we are.
It could be, but honestly, I don't think this has anything to do with anything other than like SBB is crucial to their plans in a DPS meta. It was not acceptable for him to not be playing for 3 stages. They needed to keep him fresh. They needed to keep him at the top of his game. And I think that's as far as they really thought it out with this and said, we're going to do just fine.
The other thing that I believe it was Mr. X brought up on the broadcast is like SBB is that team caller and team leader, more importantly. And what he said was, it's not easy, but it's an easy call to make when you're winning the map and you're the shot caller. It's like, okay, just keep winning, right? Like, just keep doing the thing that you're doing. But like when you're in a pinch and it comes to crunch time and you need someone to be like in the moment making those crucial decisions, like you need someone who's experienced at that and who is your leader and that the team is going to follow and is willing to take that, who's willing to make the call to win the game, not to not lose, right? And SBB, I think, is that player for and why, I don't even know. I mean, maybe it was Arc before, but like neither of those players were in the roster, so who is making their calls?
That to me means we need to throw out the idea that he's their in-game lead. He didn't touch the stage for two stages.
Yeah,
he's just not. I mean, I get it. Maybe he was in dive, but even then, probably not. It was probably, probably wasn't mono. I don't know, but it was probably coming from the support line. New York's not absent of vocal players that can shot call, and there's plenty that can do it. And now that Mono's there as their full-time tank and not ceding playtime to Janus, he's better suited to do it than SBB is. And to me, that's like a non-argument that like he's not.
I don't even think it was an argument. I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Well, point. Yeah. I mean, you could.
Yeah. We'll I guess we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, I would love to see some Pine time, but Who knows? But let's talk about some of the new players that we saw debut on their new teams this week. Fate on Florida, who we thought maybe was going to make a big splash.
You thought
The collective we of me and the 3 Mayhem fans.
you and the other 2% of pickers on High Noon.
Yeah. How did he do? What did you think of his performance?
I think that team has problems that go beyond the roster. We've just never seen anything, and we've seen them with enough talent to like make a splash. So I don't know. I'm shifting blame almost completely to the coaching staff here.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to how I kind of view Houston. Should the roster be top 3? No, of course not. But should they be competitive, and especially with Fate, I think they should be, and they still might be. I mean, it's early, and it's a big ask to see somebody jump over and make a big splash, but Fissure did it for the Gladiators last year.
True.
You know, teams, the main tank position is one that does tend to transform teams more than others. We're seeing Hangzhou Spark looking significantly better now that they've decided to go the Goo Shui direction instead of messing around with no smite.
How do you not call it the Goo Shui?
The Goo Shui? Because I don't know.
It's Goo Shui or the Highway. Come on.
Well, that's better than the Goo Shui. I like that, but yeah. So listen, I mean, things could still come together. There's roster weaknesses. I think there's coaching staff weaknesses. It's a long road to hoe here for the Florida Mayhem. It wasn't going to be a one night fix. We didn't really ever think it was going to be, but it's tough to say. Did they only have the one match, or did they play again? I'm looking to see. Yeah. So, I mean, Soul's so many levels above them. I can't even sit here and say that Fate didn't make them better or anything like that. It didn't work out in this one. Let's wait and see when they play one of these kind of bottom table teams, because the only win they have right now is against Philly when they didn't have Boombox, and they were like playing contenders players in off roles and things like that. So when that's your only win, you've got bigger problems than just what your main tank was, even if your main tank was a very significant problem for you. So I expect them to continue to improve over time, but it's not going to be a drastic difference in it.
True. Speaking of tanks, we had a new pair of tanks on Toronto in Sharik and Gods, and from where I was standing, they looked pretty good. Obviously, not good enough to win against Paris, but they look strong. They look, I think, we were talking about it while we were watching the match. Sharik already seems like an upgrade over Yakpung. Quite a bit, and Gods was not too shabby himself. What do you think, though?
I'm not sold on an upgrade at the off tank position, but I'm not sold on it being a downgrade either. I thought Gods did reasonably well. They absolutely destroyed the first map, and it looked like they were just going to cruise over the Paris Eternal. So things did fall off for them a bit after that, which was definitely unfortunate. But again, the sheer ugliness of the jerseys just sapped the strengths of the players as they wore them, and it just dragged them down. That's a rough weight around your ankles while you're trying to swim, sort of a thing. So, yeah, listen, I mean, all jokes aside about the jerseys, I think they're overall going to be better, but it's going to take some time. They do need to learn to synergize. The players need to learn to communicate with the English speakers a little bit better, and this is another one where, man, I still thought they'd be good enough to beat Paris, but it just didn't quite come together for them. I'm still hopeful, but it's one of those situations where they're stuck in that middle of the pack, and right now they're sitting at a play-in situation, so they've got a little bit of time, but it can go south on you really fast if you stack a couple losses again. You can't have another 2-5 stage like you did last stage, so they've got to get to 3 or 4 wins this stage. It's nice that they start out weeks 1 and 2 with just the one match. I like that. That gives them a little bit of stage time. This week it's London, so it might be a little rough, but get them acclimated, but focus on scrims, just get everybody talking and working together. I think you could see that the pieces were there, and there's a good chance they do come together a little bit, but just wasn't quite yet. And maybe it was just all Havana, like the new map. They just weren't quite there at the end. Maybe that would have pushed it to map 5, and then we saw what happened in the last King of the Hill map. I don't know. It could have been It was a close 3-1. I'll say that. Not all 3-1s are close, and this one was fairly close.
True. Yeah, I definitely think, that not Paris, Havana, well, Paris too, but Havana definitely was an interesting one. That last fight, man, that was a great fight to watch. I don't even remember a fight that's lasted that long, in a while at least.
The coolest thing to me was I didn't even notice the Widowmakers came out.
Yeah.
Until the kills came out from them. So it was
right.
All of a sudden it was somebody, we were watching the camera perspective of somebody that IM-37 killed out of nowhere. And then it was the flex support player suddenly was on Widowmaker for the defense too. And he got the angle on IM-37 and things kind of went from there. But I don't know. It was that map is interesting. I like it so far. The teams haven't figured it out yet and they're kind of a mess on it. But overall, I think it's a cool map. I can't wait to see them figure it out and learn it. We definitely saw Paris evolve dramatically over stage 3. So hopefully this map does the same.
Yeah, for sure there. Last one we want to talk about here is Fact Fiction on the LA Valiant.
Well, I mean, the Valiant 4-0'd somebody. So I think that might be a first time this stage. I think things are looking up for them. I'm not ready to say he's an upgrade to Fate or anything like that, but I've been a Fact Fiction fan since before the Overwatch League started. He's a really solid, strong main tank player. I think he's going to continue to gel with the team a little bit. He was the only one of their additions that they actually played, so Shax didn't get in, and we kind of knew, right, that McGravy wasn't going to, and even Costa was interviewed or something. I want to say he was on the broadcast, and he's like, "Man, yeah, we signed McGravy, and that's a tough one because Space is one of the best in the world, and he's probably not going anywhere. But it's nice to have the backup and the option and things like that." So, I thought he fit in reasonably well. Shanghai is a significantly better team than the Valiant this season. I think Shanghai is really underrated. So they were competitive there. They lost that 3-1. But most people thought Chengdu were a better team than the Valiant, and boy, did it not look like it, even a little bit in that match. So good on the Valiant. I think they're kind of doing things right. Maybe we start to see Shax worked in a little bit over time. Maybe they go back to Izzyaki. We don't really know, but for now, no negatives when you 4-0 a team that I thought you were worse than going into it. That's a good sign. So we'll hopefully see them continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week. We get to see how they're going to treat their season, and it's well, maybe they're trying some things, but they got some quality Overwatch in this week. So definitely, I mean, everything's looking like it's on the up and up for LA Valiant now, but that's mostly because it can't get worse for them. They are already out, but. Let's move on here and let me find the button. There it is. Let us talk about the matches that are going to be going on this week. Starting off on Thursday, we've got the Houston Outlaws versus the San Francisco Shockerinos here. We've got S tier versus B minus C tier here. Give me San Francisco 4-0.
I'm going to go 3-1 just because I think if they are committing to, I don't even know, how do you, they looked good enough they might be able to steal a map. San Francisco's not on that map streak anymore. I don't know. It's going to be a decisive San Francisco win. I just think there's a decent chance Houston steals a map, and I feel a little bit better writing down a 3-1 loss than a 4-0 loss. So.
Makes sense to me. Next up, we've got the Shanghai Dragons versus the Atlanta Reign. Who do you got?
I said it. This is my prove it week here for Atlanta. Are they consistent, or are we just watching an inconsistent team peak against some good teams? I don't know. In between the New York wins, people seem to forget they lost to the Guangzhou Charge in Stage 2. They also lost to the LA Valiant and the Boston Uprising. I'll be giving more stats on why losing to Boston Uprising is kind of a big deal a little bit later on. I think Shanghai is really underrated right now, and they're a more consistent team as I see them. But again, I'm only 1 week away from considering Atlanta to be kind of upper middle tier able to compete
Right.
with anybody. Kind of, I'm only 1 week away, so this isn't a confident thing. I look at the 2/3 majority of people, like 66% of people are picking Atlanta to win here, and I'm thinking it's like 55, 50, 51 to 55% in Shanghai's favor. So I'm going to give the Dragons the win here, 3-2. I think they're considerably underrated right now by most people, and I'm going to pick them to steal maybe an upset here. I don't know. It's Atlanta's very hard to place right now.
Yeah, and I think this is their, like you said, this is their prove it week. Like they had two close matches against the two best teams, arguably, or at the very least two of the top three teams in the league. Obviously they went 0-2, but that was the exact expected result for them. If they stole even a single one of those games, people will be calling them God Slayer, and they're the best team they're arguably the best team in the league. And it's like, well, they lost, but they were both close. So it's like, where does that put them? I think that puts them solidly like in like a play-in game. Like these are their placement matches right now. Like they lost
they're
their
better
first
than
two.
their record, but they're not as good as people are giving them credit for. So they're like in between in my mind.
Right, but they could be though. So
They could be.
Shanghai is almost like the perfect match for them to be like, okay,
Yep.
are we above the line or are we below the line?
There's no built-in excuses for losing this week. You've got to face the music with these results that come in for Atlanta.
Earn it. But long story short, for me, I'm going to give Atlanta the victory here, 3-1. I do, if it really is a 2/3 majority in favor of Shanghai, I do think that this is a flip it for pick'em strategy considerations, but I'm going with Atlanta here. But that does mean that the one and only coin must be consulted here for
everybody's second favorite host is going to weigh in on who's going to win this one, and we have heads, and I didn't say who.
No, you didn't.
So we've got to reflip. The test flip says that heads is going to win this one. Let's see if it changes his mind. We will go. I mean, tails never fails, right? That didn't count. That's why heads came up.
Right.
So Shanghai's tails, Atlanta's heads.
Yeah.
We've got heads. So
the double confirmed.
Yep.
The coin is absolutely sure that Atlanta's going to win.
I'm changing it now. Coin knows all.
Two coin flip. One coin flip. Yeah, it's random.
Yeah, that's 50-50.
Coin flips.
Two is significantly higher than 50%.
50-50 plus 50-50. That's 100% right? Like that's how two coin flips.
That's
work.
how addition works.
Think about it. 50
plus 50 is 100.
True story. Next up, we've got the Dallas Fuel versus the Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu does not look good right now, and Dallas does not look that bad right now.
Chengdu's making stage one mistakes. They're playing musical chairs with their roster. Is it Jikarin? Is it Ameng? Is it Gary? Is it Kaio? We don't know, and neither do they. And that's a terrible way to run a team. It's a terrible way to get results. Mm-hmm. And Seoul's going to learn someday. Basically, as soon as the playoffs hit, Seoul's going to figure that out for themselves. I would imagine. But they're the only ones able to hot swap their roster around and see even remotely consistent results in the regular season. Nobody else has been able to do it in Chengdu. I don't know why they think they're going to be able to. I have no faith in them whatsoever. Dallas kind of flopped a little bit this week, right? They didn't need to win against the Gladiators. They needed to compete against the Gladiators.
They needed to play.
They didn't. So that was rough. But, I mean, we don't know that the Gladiators didn't ascend. We build that as two teams trying to ascend and push up into that top tier. And just because Dallas lost doesn't mean there's a panic. It doesn't mean anything's terribly wrong with the team. It just means they didn't ascend yet. And maybe the Gladiators did. We can't say for sure. So I have no panic on Dallas, but I was surprised to see them kind of fall flat a little bit this week. I'm going to give them a 3-1 win here. The Chengdu DPS composition has a really good chance, I think, to steal a map off of them. But Dallas is decidedly the better team, so they're going to.
Yep. The one thing that they brought up a bunch, and maybe we might have even talked about it, I don't remember. Chengdu was known as being like, they are the ones that play the different comp. They don't conform to the meta. Well, when you play the same different comp for 5 weeks, it's not that different anymore. There's a lot of tape on them. You can play against it. Like the surprise factor is gone. The newness of it is gone. It's not that different, or it's not
The
new. And it's
shine
not
is
that
off
good.
the apple. Is that the phrase? Is that a phrase?
It might be. I have never heard it before, but
I
it
don't
does
know if
make
it's
sense.
off an apple, but the shine is off something. I think it's it.
It makes sense. I get what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're putting down, especially if what you're putting down is an apple. I'll take a bite out of it and also take Dallas 3-1 here. Next up, we got Hangzhou Spark versus the Vancouver Titans, which, again, in my mind, I read as LA Valiant, but the result is the same nonetheless. I mean, this is just, it's Vancouver. Don't pick them to lose until we see it. And it's in the regular season, and I don't see it happening for quite some time here. Give me Vancouver 3-1.
Same.
Yeah, really no insight here. It would be a huge upset, which I mean, I'm not going to predict.
Hangzhou can compete. You don't got to be afraid of him in fantasy, but we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. On Friday, we've got the Paris Eternal versus the New York Excelsior. I think it seems like if NYXL is going to be running the SBB comp and playing SBB with Somber Goats, it seems like even playing against the best Goats team in the league, they're going to be fine here. Looks like SBB kind of got his rust off. We haven't really seen what Paris can do outside of that comp, outside of Goats. So give me NYXL and give me a patented 5-0 here.
So if New York plays like they did against Houston, I would expect them to win 3-1 or 3-2. And if they play against like they did against the second team, who
London Spitfire,
from London, then I expect them to win 4-0. So I'll split the difference and pick New York 3-0.
I like it. Next up, we've got the Toronto Defiant versus the London Spitfire. Man, yeah, Toronto. They lost a match that they should have won. This is, one of the hallmarks of like how do you have a solid team? You win those matches that you should win. I mean, for what it's worth, Paris did look quite good. They do look like they've improved a bit, but not.
They're back to Ben Best. I don't think they're better.
They're not great. There's no argument there. So Toronto definitely looks like they need to pick up their cards here and see what they're playing with. The two new tanks, I mean, obviously they have a week of they've got a week on stage under their belts, which is nice. The team is still learning each other. Like the Toronto has a lot more room to move here than London does, but regardless, I cannot in good faith pick Toronto this week. Give me London 3-1.
It's tough to pick them. London does start stages really slowly, but nothing's changed from last stage, so I don't know why they're starting slow this time around. There's a solid puncher's chance here for Toronto to come out and surprise us, but I'm not going to predict it. I'm not going to predict it. I'm going to go London 3-1 here. And Toronto needs a little bit more time to get everything figured out.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they are quickly running out of time in this season, but they do still have a little bit. Next up, we've got Boston Uprising versus the Houston Outlaws.
Yeah, Boston is 1-6 in their last 7 games. That is an 8-22 map score. They've lost to Paris. They've lost to Washington. Why is this vote 74% in favor of Boston? I don't even need to sit here and tell you. I don't even need to sit here and tell you I think Houston is significantly improved or anything like that. None of which I think is true. I think they've got their roster figured out a little bit better as far as who's going to be on the stage for them, assuming they don't change it up, which who knows, they very well might. But listen, their GOATS is way worse than their DPS comps, but I think it's good enough to take a map against Boston here. Whether they do or not should be the decisive factor in whether or not this is a 3-1 win for Houston or like a 3-2 win for Boston. Mm-hmm. But their GOATS looked pretty strong against New York on the Numbani when they played it, and on Gibraltar. Like they seem to have things at least mildly better than they were last stage. They seem to have used the break a little bit. I'm not calling for a tier change for Houston. I'm just arguing that because of the way the stages broke up, nobody's noticed that there's been a fairly significant downgrade in tiers for Boston yet. I think this is way closer to 50-50 than 70, than 3/4 of the vote going Boston's way. I will be predicting the upset, Houston 3-1 here, but man, if you don't need to make up ground, if you're like sitting at the top of the pick'ems or something like that, you should probably just pick Boston. But I'm not, so I'm going to say Houston 3-1.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said here. For pick'em considerations, this is another really good flip. The 74% in favor of Boston is definitely too high, especially considering the stats that you pointed out. I am going to predict the Boston win here 3-1, but if you do need to make up some ground and pick them, this is a really good flip. But that does mean everyone's second favorite host of the show, the coin, must be brought on, and I believe it's tails never fails for Houston, right?
Yes, but we've seen the coin lock in to one side previously, and I don't want to miss out on that. So I'm going to put Houston on the head side of things and hope that the coin is weighted yet again.
All right,
that was a high flip. I almost didn't catch that one. It's heads. Houston, the coin is heads. I'm showing it, so it's not like I'm cheating. There you go.
I mean, you're cheating by having it come up heads every time and then switching it to heads. But
hey, I can't control that flip. That one almost hit my ceiling.
Well, we'll see.
But
the coin has declared Houston is going to be winning this one, so I think it's an easy flip at that point. Next up, we've got the LA Gladiators versus the Philadelphia Fusion.
If anybody doubts the coin, it's only wrong half the time, okay?
True.
So get off our back.
True. And it's right 50% of the time, but if you flip it twice, it's 100% right.
Right.
Think about it. LA Gladiators versus the Philadelphia Fusion.
Again, I flipped it twice. 100% Houston wins.
Yep.
Good idea, Blevins. Good idea.
See, there you go.
Sorry, go ahead.
LA Gladiators versus Philadelphia Fusion. I feel like all I need to do is press the button. Old bad Philly is in full swing right now. Give me the 4-0 for Gladiators.
No fraggy, no win, especially not against a team that looks as good as the Gladiators look right now. I've said that before. They've come out and surprised me. I've said no fraggy, no win before about Philadelphia. They've immediately come out and won and shut me up, and sometimes Sato does perform well. But they're so inconsistent, and the Gladiators are just not anywhere near as inconsistent as that. I'm Gladiators for them.
No fraggy, no win. Also, no Carpe on Carpe Heroes, no win either. But that's another conversation. Saturday, we've got Washington Justice versus the Hangzhou Spark. Washington is securely, in my mind, in the do not pick them to win under any circumstances, though they will get some wins from time to time. And this theoretically could be one that they squeeze out, but I'm going with Hangzhou 3-1.
Hangzhou's looking strong. Washington is improving. They're not like Florida, who's not, and it's like they're in the, I don't know. I can't even put Houston in the improving camp, but it looked like it from one game. But like the Valiant are improving, and they're one of these bottom tier teams that are making strides. We'll see about Houston. No promises. They're still coached and managed by the same people, so can't promise that. But this isn't like Florida, so yes, there's a decent chance for Washington to make a surprise appearance here and get the W. But you can't pick it. And Janus is tanking, so can't pick that one. Hangzhou 3-1 for me as well.
No Janus, no win. See, I got the double negative in there.
Double negative,
yeah.
Or double positive. What was that?
No, that's a double negative, which is actually Janus's nickname. Next up, actually, it's triple negative. Seoul Dynasty versus Atlanta Reign. This is a close one here. This again, I mean, this is one of those ones where it's like, how does Atlanta do versus Shanghai?
Yeah.
Although it also might not matter at all because Atlanta is almost Philadelphia, like, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Philadelphia Fusion levels where it's like they can just win or lose against anyone. Seoul can also certainly lose against anyone. That being said, I'm just going to go with the gut here and give me an Atlanta 3-2 victory over Seoul here.
Yeah, I will let their earlier performance in the week inform this pick for me in Pick'ems, and I think everybody that's tryharding in Pick'ems should certainly do that. But for now, when I haven't seen anything to prove that they don't just like show up for the big games and go home against the for the easy ones, I'm going to take Seoul here. It's going to be close. I think Atlanta can obviously, they've proven compete with anybody. But Seoul is like, they had roster changes recently on the Atlanta side, so maybe they're not as far ahead and ensconced. And I don't know. I'm basically making up reasons why Seoul's self-imposed disadvantages aren't going to hurt them this time, because it really hasn't bit them yet. As much as I think it's a terrible way to run a team, it just hasn't bit them yet. So I'm going to go
Highly
Seoul.
and Illicit looked pretty decent this week. Yeah, I mean, these are two matches where Atlanta gets to see what side of the line they're on. Are they moving up? Are they two placement matches really for Atlanta this week? So it's going to be an interesting week as an Atlanta Reign fan. Next up, we've got the Dallas Fuel versus...
Coin.
Oh, yes, we do need a coin here.
Heads for Atlanta, tails for Seoul. Heads again. This
Ooh,
coin. I'm telling you, I'm glad I saw it coming. I'm glad I saw it coming, and thought I had to use the hacked coin to my advantage.
Head. Rigged confirmed. But I mean, the coin is going with Atlanta here, so that's an easy win here. Speaking of easy wins, next up we're talking about the Dallas Fuel versus the Vancouver Titans. I did say the Vancouver Titans in this sentence, and the San Francisco Shock was not mentioned as their opponent, so I'm going to pick the Vancouver Titans here, 3-1.
Yeah, earmuffs, Bob. Dallas is not good enough to take this one down. I think they've got it in them to get a map. We need to get them going a little bit more on the Dallas side. Don't know exactly what happened to them last week, but I don't expect, like I said, and there's no panic, there's no problem here, but I'm going to give it 3-1 to Vancouver.
Bob in the chat goes 4-0 for Vancouver. Dallas only loses 4-0. Well, fair enough.
Bob's got a beat on it that when they're defeated, they're just completely defeated, and I just haven't even verified the map records. So we'll touch on that next week if it happens. Yes, for sure. Yes, he's much more invested in their outcomes. So I trust him, but I've got to see it for myself to pick with it.
I can believe it. They definitely have had some horrific losses. Next up, we've got Guangzhou Charge versus LA Valiant here. Valiant, like you said, looking on the up and up. Guangzhou, they're not looking super great right now.
Blevins, they have one of the easiest schedules in stage 3 and 4, and all these reasons why they're going to get better. It's got to happen. Show me that you're getting better if you want me to believe it. And the Valiant have been doing that, and the Charge haven't. Now, that said, I think the Charge not improving and the Valiant improving puts them pretty close to each other. So I'm gonna pick Valiant 3-2 here.
This is some sweet pick'em points we match here, or not?
Yeah, it is
fantasy points.
I think it was even. I'm gonna get the exact pick percentages on it, but one of them was like dead on 50%. Yeah. And this one probably should have been if it wasn't. But yeah, I'm gonna go 3-2 here for the Valiant. But this is super flippable. If you have a gut, you think the Charge are better, you're completely fine to make that pick. There's far from anything crazy going on there. But let's see. 55% in favor of the Valiant. Yeah. It's also early in the week, so it's the percentages are changing by the minute probably as I refresh. But right now, 55.
Certainly a fine flip here. I got Valiant 3-1 for my pick. Moving on to Sunday, the last matches of the week we have here: San Francisco Shock versus the Seoul Dynasty. I mean, this would be huge for Seoul if they could really play up here against San Francisco, which Seoul is one of those teams that can punch above their weight class in against these titans of teams. Pun not intended there. And San Francisco certainly is an S tier team right now. Seoul, they have an opportunity to. With that being said, I'm going with San Francisco 3-1 here. I'm not picking the upset, but it is not out of the realm of possibility here, I don't think.
Yeah, listen, it hasn't bit them yet that they switched their roster around so much, but and this won't count as biting them if they swap their roster around a whole bunch and lose to San Francisco, because San Fran does look that good. But it's not like you can't win when you do what they're doing against these best teams, because they're playing at a higher peak and a higher level than your roster possibly could, because they've been together for how many matches and how many scrims in a way that your team just hasn't. So
Right.
I'm going to say 3-0 San Francisco because I think it's like 50-50 that Seoul's able to take a map off of this one. Certainly good enough to compete and surprise, but I just can't see it the way they change up their roster and set themselves back so often. So San Fran 3-0.
Yeah, definitely in agreement with you there. Next up, we've got Florida Mayhem versus the Paris Eternal. Man, I'm going to feel so bad if Florida wins this one and I didn't pick them, but I did not pick them here. By the transitive property, if Florida beats Paris and Paris beats Toronto, that means I have to believe that Florida is better than Toronto, and I can't stomach that right now. So give me Paris 3-1.
You've missed roughly 3 episodes of the show ever, and so that means it took 165 episodes for you to finally learn the lesson. Congratulations, Blevin.
I finally learned the lesson on the week where they're probably the most likely to actually win.
It's way closer than last week.
Yeah.
I will say how good the alternate jerseys looked, Florida would be winning in a landslide, but it doesn't. So give me Paris 3-1.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Philadelphia Fusion versus the Boston Uprising. This is what the Super Bowl from 2 years ago rematch, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, Eagles versus Patriots. Yeah, So, man, this is a tough one because both of these teams look pretty bad right now. Who do you got, Death?
Man, I don't care. I'm gonna pick Philly here, 3-2. I do care because Boston's the literal owned by the literal devil. So I'm gonna pick with my heart and go with Philly. But it's so toss up. Spoiler alert, we're flipping a coin for.
Yeah, I'm tossing it up.
it's that iffy and that close. Man, it's all as it always is. It's all on Philadelphia who shows up.
And if
I can't
Fraggy
offer
shows up,
any more analysis than that. Is which Philly shows up? The one that can make Sato not look like a potato, or the one that shows up most of the time these days.
Sato not look like a
So
potato.
I'm going Philly a little bit because
episode title.
I really just think people haven't caught on to how bad Boston's looked. Even if I stretch out their record, I gave you that one win in the last 6 or whatever. If you add 2 more, you just have like 3-2 barely snuck by wins against teams they probably should have just beaten outright. So it doesn't get significantly better if you expand the sample size a little bit. Boston trending the wrong direction. Philly's just been down here for a while. So I don't know. I'll give it Philly 3-2, but it's 50-50.
I'm going Boston 3-2. Just the gut feeling. No Fraggy, no win.
This was the 50-50 one on the nose in the pick'ems, but right now it is 51% Philadelphia. So I guess I'm picking the favorite here. Let's see if the coin agrees. Let's put Philly in that head spot so that way I'm right here again. Oh my God, dude! It's not even kidding you. It's just heads
wow.
again. Right. It's another. We've had 2 this year where the coin just refuses to show a different result.
True, and it was tails last time, ironically.
All those hours I've spent trying to move objects with my mind and pretend to be a Jedi are finally paying off. It's working.
Yes, as 3 out of your 4 picks are now correct by the coin standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will let the teams know accordingly that they're not allowed to win.
Yes.
The coin said so.
Yes. Rigged, confirmed. Last match of the week, we've got the Washington Justice versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. And you did hear me say Washington Justice, so give me the Gladiators 4-0 here.
No, Janus, no win. Yeah, Gladiators 4-0.
Yeah.
They look great. So, give them the old W and a sweep to close out the week.
Yeah, which would put Gladiators in a pretty strong position here. They did lose to Vancouver last week, but they 4-0'd Dallas. They're looking to add 2 more 4-0s this week, which would be pretty strong here. But that is going to be it for the week, guys. I thought we were going to run short, but we ran a little bit long today. So hope you guys enjoyed it.
Classic.
It was the Jersey talk. That was where we really went off the rails here. But that's the type of rails I do want to go off. Death, any last minute stuff that we should go over before we get going here?
No, I think that's it. Just keep an eye out. You're going to have nimble ears to keep track of foul play for maybe a week or two. If I had to guess, we might be moving around a little bit, but keep an eye out for that. This week is tomorrow. Again, we've got Blackwatch Report, Volamel, and Boop on for the Contenders Roundtable.
Yes.
You don't want to miss that. And if you're Canadian and the voting is still open, I mean, you got to vote Root Bear. Go put in a second ballot for Root Bear. Go buy another Overwatch account just to vote for Root Bear again.
Yes.
I said it's okay. It's fine.
Yes, it's fine, and it's definitely still open, even though I'm pretty sure it's not. But if you really need to root for something in Canada, let's go Raptors. They're playing as we speak right now. I have not looked at the score, so let's go Raps. But guys, that is going to be it for the week. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Make sure you check us out on all the platforms, now including Spotify for all of our shows, including the Blackwatch Report. Just check out High Noon Productions on Spotify. You can also find us on iTunes, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all that stuff. High Noon Podcast. You can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/High Noon Podcast. Has definitely helps us do cool stuff like go to the grand finals and get cool audio equipment like these mics that we have finally gotten to a point where they sound all right, hopefully. But guys, that is going to be it for Deathblow, for Twitch chat, and for everyone in High Noon Podcast Land. I am the Blevins, and remember, guys, it's High Noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
No, Janus, no win. No Fraggy, no win.